worship the God who was. We worship the God who is. We worship the God who evermore will be. He opened the prison doors. He parted the raging sea. My God, He holds the victory. Yeah. There's joy in the house of the Lord. There's joy in the house of the Lord today. We won't be quiet. Shout out your praise. There's joy in the house of the Lord. Our God is surely in this place. We won't be quiet. Shout out your praise. Shout out your praise. We sing to the God who heals. We sing to the God who saves. We sing to the God who always makes a way. 'Cause He hung upon that cross and He rose up from that grave. My God, still rolling stones away. There's joy in the house of the Lord. There's joy in the house of the Lord today. We won't be quiet. Shout out your praise. There's joy in the house of the Lord. Our God is surely in this place. We won't be quiet. We shout out your praise. We were the beggars, now we're royalty. We were the prisoners, now we're running free. We are forgiven, accepted, redeemed by His grace. Let the house of the Lord sing praise. We were the beggars, now we're royalty. We were the prisoners, now we're running free. We are forgiven, accepted, redeemed by His grace. Let the house of the Lord sing praise. There's joy in the house of the Lord. There's joy in the house of the Lord today. And we won't be quiet. We shout out your praise. There's joy in the house of the Lord. Our God is surely in this place. We won't be quiet. Shout out your praise. There's joy in the house of the Lord. There's joy in the house of the Lord today. We won't be quiet. Shout out your praise. There's joy in the house of the Lord. Our God is surely in this place. We won't be quiet. Shout out your praise. Oh, we shout out your praise. Joy in this house today. We shout out your praise. We shout out your praise.
Welcome to Prairie Lakes Church. I'm Cody, the digital pastor here. And before anything else, we need you to hear that we're a no matter church. What that means is no matter who you are, where you've been, what you've done, or even what's been done to you, we need you to hear God loves you. And you can go on the journey here with us. You can look for Him here. You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to clean yourself up to be here. We are really glad that you're here. And if you're joining us for the first time or the 100th time, and you just haven't taken that step in becoming known, I'd encourage you to take that step here today, because what we know is connected people are growing people. So when you take that step in becoming known, when you ask questions about how you can get connected, about how you can grow in your walk with Jesus, God will bless that. God will use that. So I encourage you, if you just haven't taken that step, even if you've been attending for a long time, to take that step right now. And as an added incentive, I'll send you an Amazon gift card just as a thank you. So you can fill out our welcome card to let us know who you are by texting PLC to 99581. Again, that's PLC to 99581. The next step that we take here is serving purposefully. And over the pandemic until now, a lot of us have kind of fallen into this trap of reducing church engagement, our participation in church, to attendance only. So maybe you're joining us here at home today, and that's you. You've been attending online consistently, and that's great. But that can only take us so far. So my encouragement to you would be to take that next step in engaging deeper. And a great way to do that is through serving purposefully. Because when you jump on a team, you not only fuel our ministry, but it's one of the quickest ways for Prairie Lakes Church to feel more like home, to feel more like community, to build relationships with those that you're serving alongside. So if you want to sign up to serve, or you just want to talk to me about what serving opportunities we even have here online, I'd love to do that. So again, all you need to do is text PLC to 99581, select that you want to take the next step of serving, and I would love to connect with you. And the next step that we talk about every single week is giving generously. And practically, when you give generously, you fuel our ministry. And this last week, we were actually able to get together as a staff, and what we have, a rhythm that we have of a checkpoint meeting. We do this seasonally. And what we get to do is we get to look at how God worked in and through our church. We got to look at the numbers. We had 98 baptisms. We had so many faith line decisions here over the summer. We were able to hear stories of those individuals who made that change. This is across Iowa, across our campuses, and even beyond. So I just want to thank you to everyone who has given so generously to Prairie Lakes Church, who has made that work possible. And I want to encourage you, if you haven't taken that step, to consider investing in the ministry here, to give generously alongside so many faithful givers here at Prairie Lakes Church. So if you want to give to increase in your generosity, or to give for the very first time, you can do that right now at prairielakes.org/give. We're going to continue in our service here today. Before we get to the message, we're going to sing a song. And this song is going to be a picture of how when we have faith in Jesus, we see the world differently. So I encourage you to sing along or reflect with us here right now.
Have you ever seen the wonder in the glimmer of first sight? As the eyes begin to open and the blindness meets the light. If you have so say, I see the world in light, I see the world in wonder, I see the world in life, bursting in living color. I see the world your way, and I'm walking in the light. Have you ever seen the wonder in the air of second life? Having come out of the waters, the old one left behind. If you have so say, I see the world in light, I see the world in wonder, I see the world in life, bursting in living color. I see the world your way, and I'm walking in the light. I see the world in grace, I see the world in gospel, I see the world your way, and I'm walking in the light. I'm walking in the wonder, you're the wonder in the wild, turning wilderness to wonder. You have so say, I see the world in love, I see the world in freedom, I see the Jesus way. You're the wonder in the wild. I see the world your way, and I'm not afraid to follow. I see the world your way, and I'm not ashamed to say so. I see the Jesus way, and I'm walking in the light. I see the world in light. I see the world in wonder. I see the world in life, bursting in living color. I see the world your way, and I'm walking in the light. I see the world in grace. I see the world in gospel. I see the world your way, and I'm walking in the light. I'm walking in the wonder. You're the wonder in the wild, turning wilderness to wonder. You have so say, I see the world in love. I see the world in freedom. I see the Jesus way. You're the wonder in the wild.
There are a wide variety of experiences in our lives that lead us to amazement. A beautiful sunrise, the wonder of the stars, the complexity of our own bodies. We marvel at these things, often because of God's amazing creation. What caused Jesus to feel that same amazement? Those same elements of creation? Or were there other aspects of life that really astonished Jesus? What made Jesus marvel?
Hey, welcome once again, everybody. Welcome to Prairie Lakes. We're really glad that you're here. Happy fall. It's like legitimately fall. Like the calendar says it's fall, and we're like in it, okay? But we're really grateful that on a fall weekend you've made a decision to join us here. What you're jumping into is week 2 of a series we started last week, and the series is called "What Made Jesus." Fill in the blank, okay? And we're looking at kind of 3 or 4 different things that seem to move Jesus to feel something, say something, do something. We want to get into his mind and heart. Lots of us in this series have also jumped into small groups, and we're just kind of working through some of this material with some other folks at Prairie Lakes in a home or somewhere. So if that's you and you've jumped into a small group, or maybe you've jumped into a small group for the first time, good job. Okay, or maybe it's the first time in a long time. And good job. Connecting relationally it's just a big deal. It's one of the big steps around here. So we're excited about that. Okay, let's jump into where we're going this weekend. I'm going to ask you a question. Here's the question. Have any of you ever taken any personality assessments? You ever taken an assessment that's kind of supposed to give you an insight into who you are and how you're wired? DISC, colors, Myers-Briggs, StrengthsFinder, Enneagram, any of those? If you haven't, if all of those are completely foreign, my guess is you probably are friends with someone who has. And on our staff at Prairie Lakes, we actually do a bunch of those. Even several of those that I listed and we do them for every single one of our staff. In fact, for every single one of our staff, we've made this resource, and we call it a baseball card. For every single one of our staff. And it just gets the results of each of our assessments along with some biographical information. I want to show you the front of mine. Okay, here's what it looks like. It's like 8.5, 11 but it's got all of my stuff on there. It's got kind of where I plot on the DISC assessment and my strengths by my top 5. And here's my Enneagram number, my Myers-Briggs stuff, and some of my bio stuff, and some of my story. Okay, we've got that for every single one of our staff. It's a lot of work to do initially. I mean, it is. Especially if you're new to our staff, it's like you're deluged with assessments, but we've just found it really valuable because a lot of the time, 1 or 2 of those assessments can provide us some pretty significant insight or even language around kind of who we are and why we do the things that we do, or what our relationships are like. And just, it's really helped us even approach conflict more constructively. Like, what's going on there? And why are we seeing things a little bit differently? Or why have we gotten sideways? It's helped us grow in our self-awareness. Just a bunch of good stuff, okay? Now, as cool as that is, and as great as it is, there can be a little bit of a dark side to it. Let me describe it this way. How many of you have a friend who is like maybe a little bit too much into one of those assessments? You ever know someone that's like they're a little too much, like you're a little too much, okay? Like they see everyone and everything in their world through the lens of whatever that assessment is. They'll say, like, every third sentence is something like, oh, that's such a 3 thing to do. Oh, well, you must be a strong J. Oh, I bet she's really orange. Golden retriever right there. Like, what is happening? Like, they're a letter and a number and a color and an animal, you know? So there can be a little bit of a dark side. Let's describe it this way. Those labels, as insightful as they can be, those labels can be limiting. Labels can be limiting. They can be insightful, but they can also be limiting. Even the ones that provide us some good insight, even the ones that are accurate, those can be limiting. You can start to think that people fit neatly and even completely into some pretty clear categories. And that if we just put the right label on them, we'll understand them, and we'll understand most of everything about them. In that way, labels can actually limit your understanding. There is this story in Matthew 8 that we're going to dive into, where Jesus interacts with someone who was labeled, and he had a pretty clear and even appropriate label. This guy wasn't labeled incorrectly. He was labeled exactly for who he was and what he did for a living. It fit him, but the same guy doesn't really live up to that label. And this is really where we're going this weekend as we continue in our series of what made Jesus. And this weekend we're talking about this: what made Jesus marvel? What made Jesus marvel? Matthew 8 is where we're going to be. We're going to be looking at the story in verses 5 through 10. So we'll have the verses on the screen for you. If you've got your Bible in front of you, we really encourage you to get in it yourself. But follow along with me. We're going to be in Matthew 8, again, verse 5. We're going to get this story. So read along with me. Verse 5 says this: when Jesus had entered a town called Capernaum, a centurion came to him. A centurion came to him asking for help, okay? So this guy was a centurion. He was a centurion. That's his label. And here's what this label meant to you. If you were in the crowd that day and you were a Jewish person like Jesus was, and you saw this centurion, you heard him speak, here's what the label of centurion, as soon as you saw this guy walking towards you, here's what you knew about him, okay? The label of centurion is a Roman military commander of 100 troops, centurion. He commands 100 guys, 100 soldiers. And as such, there's a political implication to that. That's part of the label of being a centurion. If you were a centurion, and I'm a Jewish person, I think you're kind of a scourge that's running my country. I don't get to have my own army. I'm under the thumb of yours. You're a scourge. You shouldn't be here. I don't like the fact that you're here. I can't do anything about it, but I hate it. Politically, you're different than me. There's a secular part of that label. Like, you and I, we don't see the world the same way. You don't share my values. You don't share my faith. You are the antithesis of everything I think this world ought to be and the people ought to be in it. There's a secular, almost a religious implication to that. And finally, this label of centurion, there's a coercive nature about it. Like, you are a real threat to my life. You could run me through right now if you think that's what you ought to do. And I can't do a doggone thing about it because there's 100 guys behind you. Right? There's political, secular, coercive. This is the label of a centurion if I'm a Jewish person. Now, we don't see it here in Matthew's account. But Luke, another gospel author, he also tells the same story in his account, and he adds some color and some details to actually who the centurion was. Here's what he lets us in on about who this centurion in particular, this particular one was. In Luke 7, it says this: the centurion heard of Jesus, and he sent some elders of the Jews to him, asking Jesus to come and heal his servant. When they came to Jesus, these elders pleaded earnestly with Jesus, saying this man deserves to have you help, Jesus, have you do this, because this man, this centurion, he loves our nation, Israel, and he even built our synagogue, our place of worship. So in Luke's account, the centurion sends some of the Jewish elders to Jesus. He's communicating to Jesus through these elders first. And then when Jesus is on his way to help this guy, the centurion sends another messenger in Luke's account that's going to say what we're going to see in Matthew, what the centurion says, okay? But just get the point here. Already, this guy doesn't really fit the label. He's not like a lot of the other centurions. He doesn't really fit. And he doesn't fit the label in the best possible of ways. Now think about that just for a second, because I think we love stories like that. We love stories where someone has a label, but they don't live up to that label in the best possible of ways. These are the feel-good kind of stories that we love, where someone doesn't live up to the label in a good way. It's the kid who maybe grows up maybe in poverty, or maybe a little bit poor, or maybe it's a single-parent household, and maybe it's on the tough side of town, but they achieve something. They don't fall into all of the traps that poverty kind of puts in front of them. They don't live up to their label in a great way. It's that feel-good story. It's the 5-star athlete who could be just a jerk and super prideful, but they're not. They're really gentle and they're super humble. Maybe they even serve in their community or even their church. It's the story of like the sentimental cutaway video. You know what I'm saying? Like in the Olympics, right? There's this killer athlete, but then the sentimental music starts and there's strings, and you see this like podunk Midwestern town and their humble beginnings, or it's the reality TV show. They've got this incredible voice, but they come from such, or the college game day. You know what I'm saying, right? That tugs at our heartstrings. These kinds of stories, humans at their best when they don't live up to the label. And it's the same for these Jewish elders here. Hey, Jesus, we know he's a centurion. We know. But he's one of the good ones. He's one of the good ones. He loves us. He even loves our country. You get that? He loves our country. And he's even helped us to build our church. What a feel-good story. What a feel-good story. We want those kinds of people to succeed, right? We want good things coming those kinds of people's way. We root for them. We do. Why? Because just like the Jewish elders said to Jesus, hey, they deserve it. There's a label, right? The deserving good person label. We're pretty familiar with that. It's one that we're pretty familiar, okay? The label of being a good person, right? The label of being a good person. People who are uncommonly kind and generous in a rare way, or they surprisingly don't live up to their label, or these are the people that are deserving. We just want good people like that to get good things. They're deserving. And that should be a label that Jesus can get behind, you would think. You would think. What a guy, what a great story. This is a no-brainer. Dude is a Roman who actually loves our country. He's a pagan who actually helped build our church. Send a film crew as you help him, Jesus. This is a story we want to capture and promote. I think even today, 2022, we kind of fall over ourselves when we encounter these kinds of people, when we Christians encounter these kinds of people, we church people, okay? We fall over these kinds of stories. Whenever we get a hint that someone who's got some power or influence, someone famous, maybe a famous athlete or a celebrity or a politician, whoever, when we get a hint that they might have some kind of faith in Jesus, or that they don't really live up to that label, when they might be for us, or they may even be like one of us. Whenever we encounter it, we love that. We do. We love it. We become huge fans without knowing really anything about them. Sometimes overnight. But this centurion, this centurion isn't just some famous guy who tweeted a Bible verse, right? This guy actually put his money where his mouth is. He doesn't want any accolades, Jesus, none. Get this, all he wants is for you to heal his paralyzed servant. And I dare you to think of a more deserving guy. Here's the thing. Jesus didn't marvel at any of that. None of that is what moved him. Not the fact that he bucked his label, not the fact that he loved Jesus' country, not the fact that he built a house of worship for Jesus' people and the people that shared Jesus' faith. None of that is what moved Jesus. Take a look with me to how this story actually unfolds, okay? Matthew 8, now we're in verse 7. Jesus said to him, "Shall I come and heal him?" And the centurion replied, "Lord, I don't deserve to have you come under my roof. I don't deserve. But just say the word and my servant will be healed. For I myself, as a centurion, I'm a man under authority, and I've got soldiers under me. They're under my authority. I tell this one, go, and he goes. I tell that one, come, and he comes. I say to my servant, do this, and he does it." And when Jesus heard this, he was amazed. When Jesus heard this, he was amazed. He marveled. And he said to those following him, "Truly I tell you, I've not found anyone in Israel with such great faith." Jesus wasn't moved primarily by his kindness, because this centurion was a kind guy. He wasn't moved by this centurion's generosity, even though he was. He wasn't moved by the centurion's reputation. While each of those things were super good, they weren't the things that made this centurion deserving, that moved Jesus. And that's worth unpacking, okay? Because with Jesus, good doesn't equal deserving. It's not like it is with us. What moves Jesus isn't how good we are or aren't. What moves Jesus, what makes him marvel, is how much faith we have in him. What was he moved by? What made Jesus amazed? When he looked at this centurion, what made him marvel? It was the centurion's faith. Now, before we unpack that, we're going to unpack faith a little bit here. I just want to be clear, though, before we do. Jesus was willing to help this guy before he saw how much faith he had. Okay? He was willing to help this guy before he saw how much faith he had. Verse 7 indicates as such. The translators in Matthew frame it up as like a question. Shall I come and help him? But the grammar actually says it can be framed up either as a question or a statement. Verse 7 could read, hey, shall I go? Should I go? Or it could read, I should go. On my way. It can read either way. And as Luke tells the story, Jesus is actually on his way already when he hears what Matthew's just told us he said. He's already made the decision to go help him before he hears of the centurion's faith. What moved Jesus to help was just Jesus. But what made Jesus marvel isn't this guy's reputation. It's not the life that he lived. It's not what he did. What made Jesus marvel was the centurion's faith. Okay, so now let's dive into what we mean by faith, because that's a word, that word faith, that's a word that's so familiar to us that it kind of starts to mean a bunch of different things. And then when it starts to mean a kind of a bunch of different things, it doesn't really mean anything specifically. It starts to become unclear. So let's unpack it. Having faith, what do we mean by that? Having faith is this. Having faith is believing with such certainty, with such a high or deep level of certainty, believing to such a level that it dictates how you see the world around you, the whole world. It dictates how you see the world and how you navigate your world. That's what faith is. Faith is believing in something with such certainty that it starts to change how you see the whole world and how you start to navigate your own. Let's simplify that definition by maybe saying this. Genuine faith, the kind that we're talking about in Scripture, genuine faith exists only when what I believe determines how I live. Okay? That's genuine faith. when what I believe impacts, determines, dictates how I live. Which I think starts to illuminate how some of us might be in danger of either watering down or maybe misunderstanding this concept of faith. Some of us, we just kind of water it down, I think. Here's how. We water down faith when we boil it down to just being a set of ideas that I think are true, and they just exist in my mind. And I agree with those ideas, or I ascribe to those ideas. It's almost like a brand or a t-shirt or a tribe. I'm this or I'm that. It's just a label. And the label exists only in my mind. You know, and if I were to talk about it, I'd say, this is what I believe. But the reality is anyone can do that. Anyone can do that. Anyone can say that they agree with a set of ideas, even religious ones. Anyone can say that I believe in God or I have faith in Jesus. I mean, fine, okay. But there's a real difference, isn't there, between those who just have that kind of faith and those who have it to the level that it causes them to see the world differently and navigate it differently. I want to tell you a story that I think maybe illustrates this, okay? And again, it's fall, it's legit fall. And you know, if you've heard me talk about the fall, you know where I'm going already. I'm going to talk about deer hunting. Yeah, I know. But it's one of my favorite times of year. It is. And here's one of my favorite things about having a hobby that gets me outside, okay? And especially gets me outside at these times of year. In this part of our country, in this time of year, what you're going to see is you get to see the world change. I mean, it's super cool, right? Because right now there are still leaves on the trees and they're starting to change. The leaves are starting to change. But a few weeks from now, just full fall colors, maybe even not even that much. Full fall, just gorgeous. Getting out in that is awesome. And you think if you continue outside, you know, a few weeks from then, there's no more leaves. And then maybe a few more weeks, or maybe not, we're starting to have that 4-letter word, snow, right? And I love that, okay? I know everybody does. Cold temps, just a different kind of beautiful. Up on our farm, where I get to experience this, we've got a few hundred acres of timber. And through this timber, the Wapsipinicon River runs through it. And a couple of 100 yards from the Wapsi, and this is where a lot of these small rivers in Iowa are, there's some like switchgrass that grows up, and there are these creeks that kind of feed into the river. And these creeks, some of them are deep enough where if you stepped in them, you stepped in that creek, that water is going to go up and over your boot, and you're going to have kind of a cold, miserable day of cold, wet feet, all right? So there's been more than a few times where if I'm out there in December, you know, the temperatures have fallen enough where that creek's going to start to freeze over and freeze up. But I'm going to get to that creek, and I got to cross that creek, and I got to ask myself this question: how frozen over is it really? Because I am not a small-sized individual, let's say, diplomatically, right? Like, I don't know if it's going to hold me up, okay? So just imagine, okay, you're there with me now. Imagine for a second that you are standing there with me. When I say you, I don't mean just you individually. It's not just you and me. It's all of you. It's like thousands of you. All of us collectively have traipsed through the woods. We've scared every animal out of that woods, right? That's not really the point. But we get to this creek, and we got to go across, all of us. All right? You there with me? It's a cold Iowa day. We've walked through the timber. We've walked through this open field of switchgrass. We're getting to the creek. It runs 100 yards that way, 100 yards that way. We got to go across. And so all of you are standing there with me, all of you. And here's what I say to all of you. I say, hey, it's safe to cross right there. Okay? Imagine I said that to you. What are you going to say back to me? I know exactly what you're going to say. You go first. Right? That's what you're going to say. Jerks. You would, right? So, okay. So in this imaginary scenario, keep going with me. Let's say I'm not going to go first. Let's say I am the worst wilderness guide ever. I'm not going first. I'm making you go. Okay? Let's just imagine that. I've led you out of the woods. I'm forcing you to go across this creek. I'm forcing you to make a decision. Here's your decision. Do you have faith in me or not? It's really the decision. Is your belief in what I'm telling you so strong that it dictates how you see that creek and whether or not you're going to take a step onto it? Let's say I do this. Let's say I divide you into two groups. I say something like, hey, if you have faith in me, come on this side of me. And I say, hey, if you don't have faith in me, come on this side of me. Let's say I do that, right? I'm a bad wilderness guide. I'm just going to get worse. That's going to make you feel uncomfortable, right? That's going to make you feel uncomfortable. If I say something like that, you're probably going to respond back to me, no. It's not that we don't have faith in you. Don't take it personally. I'm just not comfortable doing that. I mean, fair enough, but that's the point of this imaginary scenario we're walking through. Here's what we want to do. We desperately want to separate faith from action. I want to be someone who still says that I have faith, but I'm just not comfortable doing that. That's okay, right? The rest of the world is going to think that's just fine. That's understandable, even. It's just that is something different than what the Bible describes when it describes faith. Let's go back to my now too long story, okay? We'll finish this up. Let's say this. Let's say you've had the courage and you've stepped to my right, okay? And you're taking me at my word. You're going to be a part of the group that says, no, I do have faith in you. Awesome. You're in, right? You're in. You went to the right. You stepped across that line, so to speak. Mission accomplished, right? Well, kinda. I mean, you've taken the first step, and your first step has been taken in the right direction. We can say that. But the question is this: how do you know if you're really in? How do you know if your faith is genuine faith? You're going to know it when you take a step onto that ice, right? When it comes to having faith, we said a couple of things, okay? Here's the third thing we want to say. Genuine faith gets revealed when it gets tested, when it requires you to actually act on it. There's a bunch of people in Scripture who believed after they saw Jesus do something, right? Which is great. I mean, that's still genuine faith. That's why Jesus did some of these amazing things in the first place. They believed after they saw. And there were even people who saw all of those things and still didn't believe. That's also true. But this centurion, this story that we've been unpacking, what made Jesus marvel at this centurion was this: he believed before he saw. He believed before. And his belief before he saw dictated how he lived, how he approached Jesus. It was his faith that dictated his approach to Jesus, what he said, what he did, how he navigated the life, his world, right? It wasn't that he saw and that caused him to believe, which changed how he was living, although it works that way sometimes. It was that he believed, which dictated how he was living, which resulted in something cool. This paralyzed servant of his getting healed. The centurion approached Jesus the way that he did, not because he thought he deserved his help. He approached Jesus the way that he did because of what he believed about his helper. The centurion approached Jesus the way that he did, not because he thought he deserved Jesus' help, because of the way he was living and his reputation, blah, blah, blah. No. He approached Jesus the way that he did because of what he believed about his helper. There's some more color to the centurion's story that doesn't show up in either account, but it's still true, okay? The elders, in Luke's version, the elders who were acting as the centurion's delegation, those Jewish leaders who were campaigning for this guy to Jesus, those Jewish elders who were such big fans of the centurion probably still would have never dared to step in the centurion's house, even if they were his invited guests. They wouldn't have. Because to them, the centurion was unclean. He was someone who would make them impure. They were the centurion's fans because of how he treated them, but they were never going to be his friends. And this centurion knows that as he's approaching another Jewish person, Jesus. He knows that. Which makes his response to Jesus all the more amazing, because what the centurion is doing in response to Jesus is this: hey, I know you can't come all the way. I know you can't. I mean, you believe that I'm going to infect you with whatever Gentile disease I've got, apparently. You know, you've got to keep your distance. I'm not trying to make you do something that's uncomfortable or going to make you violate your convictions. But just saying the words from wherever you are, that's enough. That's enough for me because of who I believe you to be. I don't need you to come. I don't deserve you to come. All I need for you is to speak. That's a confession that some of you probably, even now in this moment, need to make. That's a confession that some of us need to make, right? I don't need you to come, Jesus. I don't deserve for you to come, Jesus. I don't need you to show up in the way that I feel like you ought to show up, in the way that I feel like you should show up, in the way that you're obligated to show up. No. Who am I, Jesus? Who am I to tell you what you need to be and how you need to be and when you need to be? I don't deserve that from you. I don't need that from you. All I need is for you to speak. There's a confession. Because if you do, Jesus, I believe you have the authority to speak anything into existence with the word from wherever you are. Remember what we said as we defined faith for the first time. Just the top of the slide. Here's what we said. Having faith is believing with such certainty that it dictates how you see the world and how you navigate your world. Now with this centurion story firmly in view, here's what we can say. When you have faith in Jesus in that kind of way, sometimes seeing is believing, but other times believing is seeing. Sometimes seeing is believing. Sometimes that's how it works. Sometimes it's this amazing thing and you go, oh God, you're with me. Oh Jesus, you love me. Sometimes it works that way because Jesus is super gracious. But other times, maybe even most of the time, sometimes believing is seeing. It's the belief that comes first and then you see something. That's what the centurion was saying. You don't have to be here to do it, Jesus. You don't have to. I don't need to see you with my own eyes. It's not how it has to work because that's not how it works for me in my context. I just tell a guy to go and come and they come. I don't need to see it. I just know they're going to do it because I have this authority. And if this is true for me, Jesus, with my small little 100 soldier contingent, how much more must it be for you, Son of God, with all the authority in the world? That's why the centurion calls him Lord. Because he rightly recognizes this truth. But despite there being so much in the world that isn't right in our eyes, and there's a lot, despite there being so much in our world that stands against the lordship of Jesus, and there's a lot, despite those being true, Jesus is still in charge of it all, and everyone in it is under his authority. That is still also true. With the centurion, it wasn't, if you're really Lord, then why is my servant paralyzed? Or unless you heal him, I'm not going to believe that you're Lord. No. It was this. You are Lord, Jesus. You are. And with one word, you can make him whole if you simply speak it. Doesn't mean that you will, but you could. And if you do, that's how it'll be. It's this amazing faith. This amazing faith, okay? Here's what we're going to do, okay? I'm going to have the weekend host come up and they're going to walk you through some stuff. But here's the question. I want you to kind of walk through prayerfully in the room together, okay? Here's the question. What kind of faith do you need to have that would make Jesus marvel? Is there somewhere in your life where if you decided to take Jesus at his word, to see it differently and approach differently with that kind of faith, that it would just make Jesus' jaw drop? Where in your life do you need to have the kind of faith that the centurion has that would just make Jesus marvel?
So what's your answer to Jesse's question? Is there something in your life right now that you're living in submission to rather than living in the truth that thing, whatever it is in submission to Jesus? So where can you apply the truth that thing bows down to Jesus? because that is a step of faith to live like that, to have confidence in who Jesus is and what he is able to do. So my encouragement for all of us here today is to take a step in deeper faith and deeper trust so that we could be more like the early Christians that Jesse talked about. The type of faith, the type of confidence that they could march to their death joyfully because they had so much confidence in who Jesus is and what he can do. So right now, maybe you have something you want to process in this moment. Don't do it alone. You might have someone in the room with you right now that you can do it with. We have people ready right now that can do that. If you're in church online, you can send us or hit the live prayer button. If you're on social media, you can send us a message, and we'd love to be there for you. And kids, don't run off just yet. Children's ministry is about to begin, so get ready for that, and everyone else will see you back next week.
Welcome to Story Lab. This week, we're talking about trust, while we look at the story of a man who had a lot to worry about. Oh, and we're also going to be doing this. Hey, I'm Skylar, and this is Sebastian.
And we're talking about trust, which is putting your confidence in someone you can depend on.
Sebastian has an experiment planned for us today that I'm trusting will be incredible.
Yeah, about that.
You said you have something really cool.
I did. I do.
So,
I didn't actually test it out yet.
you don't think it's gonna work?
I'm just a little worried.
Well, what is it?
This.
We're gonna have a snack?
No, we're gonna balance these forks together at once on the end of this toothpick, on the rim of that glass.
Seriously?
See, I knew it.
No. We should try it.
You'll think it'll work?
I don't know. But just because you're worried doesn't mean we shouldn't try.
Well then, let's make it. Step 1, interlock the tines of the fork. All right, what if we, did it.
That wasn't so bad.
Step 2, stick the toothpick through the middle of the fork. And yes.
So far, so good.
Step 3, balance the forks on the rim of the glass. And
See? You did it! Super cool. You didn't have anything to worry about.
that's not what I was worried about.
What are you worried about?
Step 4,
Step 4.
do not try step 4 without a grown-up. You'll do.
Thanks.
Step 4, we light the end of the toothpick on fire.
Hold on. What's supposed to happen now?
We light the toothpick on fire, it burns down to the rim. The fork stays balanced.
That's not possible. There would only be a tiny piece of toothpick still on the glass.
See, now you're worried.
Maybe a tiny bit.
Are we doing this?
You are doing this.
Countdown, please.
3, 2, 1.
Fire in the hole. What?
How is this happening?
Hold on. So turns out the center of gravity where both forks balance is actually below the pivot point where the toothpick balances on the cup, which is why it stayed up balanced when the toothpicks were burned up.
Incredible. I was right to trust you.
Never had a doubt.
It's time for...
The story before the story.
Today, we're in the very first book of the Old Testament, Genesis. The incredible world God made was broken.
But God had a plan to bless the whole world through one family,
God chose Abraham,
who had a son named Isaac.
who had twin sons named Esau and Jacob.
Jacob tricked his big brother out of his rights and blessing as the oldest.
And Esau was so angry that Jacob ran away for more than 20 years, which is where our story starts.
Take it away.
Hey everyone, I'm Erica. Let's talk about Jacob and Esau. Things had been bad between these brothers their entire lives. So bad that Jacob stayed away for 20 whole years. Jacob had been living with his uncle Laban, and he had a big family of his own with lots of kids. But then, God spoke to him.
Go back to your father's land and to your relatives. I will be with you.
Now, if you were Jacob, you'd probably be feeling all kinds of things. First of all, you might be kind of excited about getting to go home after so long. But at the same time, when you last saw your brother Esau, he was so angry, he wanted to kill you. Is he still mad? Or is he cooled down? Maybe you can actually hang out and be friends, or not. Jacob set out with his whole family, and when he got close to home, he decided to play it safe. So, he sent a message to Esau.
I don't want my brother to think I'm coming home to beg for help or anything, so tell him I've been staying with Laban and become wealthy. Now I hope I can please you.
The messenger left and returned.
We took your message to Esau, and now he's coming to meet you. With 400 men!
Say what? 400 men does not sound like a welcoming party. 400 men sounds like an army. Jacob was worried. Jacob separated his family and his herds into 2 groups, figuring if Esau attacked one group, the other group could escape. But then he did something a little more helpful. He remembered to talk to God.
Lord, you have been very kind and faithful to me. Please save me from the hand of my brother Esau. I'm afraid he'll come and attack me and my family, but you have said, I will surely give you success. I will make your children as many as the grains of sand on the seashore.
Jacob held on to God's promises, and then he decided to show his good intentions by sending a little gift to Esau. Well, not so little.
I need 220 goats, 220 sheep, 30 camels, 40 cows, 10 bulls, 30 donkeys. Now you go ahead of me, and when you meet Esau, he'll ask, what's up with all these animals? And you say, they belong to your servant Jacob. They are a gift to you. Jacob is coming behind.
On it.
Me too.
Ditto.
The whole time, Jacob was thinking, all these gifts will give Esau time to cool down, and then maybe when he finally sees me, he'll welcome me. Jacob even sent his whole family ahead, across the river, figuring that Esau would not hurt them. Then, Jacob spent the night alone, wrestling with God. Literally. But that's another story. In the morning, Jacob looked up and saw Esau coming, with 400 men. After all he'd done, Jacob was still worried. But this time, he didn't hide behind his family or gifts. He went on ahead. And as Jacob neared Esau, he bowed down to the ground 7 times. It's the moment we've all been waiting for. The brothers finally meet. Jacob and his whole family are all tensed up because this could turn into all-out war at any second. But instead, Esau ran to Jacob. He hugged him and kissed him, and both brothers wept for joy. After all that time, their family was reunited. Esau asked,
Who are all these people with you?
They are the children God has so kindly given me.
Why did you send all those herds I saw?
I hoped I could do something to please you.
I already have plenty, brother. Keep them.
No, please, accept this gift. Seeing your face is like seeing the face of God.
Then Esau went back to his home, and Jacob camped with his family in Canaan. The end!
Wow. Jacob was so worried, but what he was afraid of didn't happen.
Kinda sounds a lot like me today. I mean, I spend time stressing about something and then it turns out okay.
It's super easy to do that, but you can trust God with the little stuff and the big stuff too.
Jesus did that. I mean, even when he knew he was going to be arrested, he talked to God about it, and then he trusted God to be with him through everything.
That's right. You know, talking with God is a big part of trusting God.
So, what's our part in this story?
Well, maybe you're really worried about a big test. You can ask God to help you study and give you a clear mind. And then trust that you'll be okay, no matter how the test goes.
Or your parents are going on a big trip, and you'll be staying with your grandma for a whole week. You can ask God to give you peace and trust that God will be with you the whole time.
I was so worried all week figuring out a cool experiment to do. I kind of forgot to talk to God about it. I guess that really would have helped.
For sure. I'll see you next time.
Here's the thing. You can trust God even when you're worried. See how your experiment turned out? Brilliant.
Next upon this toothpick, I shall balance myself. Hold this.
You're actually doing this. Okay, thanks for joining us in the Story Lab. We'll see you next time.